All right, people, as people are coming in, welcome, welcome. Come on in. Um, my name is Hannah Norberg, and it is a great pleasure to welcome you all to this third webinar here today in our Road to Yaoundé series. Um, Today, we will be talking about how we can harness AI and other frontier technologies for economic development and getting, of course, ready for Yaoundé and for the upcoming MC14. I'm just going to offer a few quick rules here of the road. So this is the third webinar in our series. You don't have to take a lot of notes or anything because these are recorded and will be available on the Trade Experts website together with a short, what we call a policy recap. And so this is for trade officials all over the world. And so whether you are in Geneva or whether you are in capitals, you're equally welcome. And if you know people in capitals who should be getting this information, please do reach out to them and share the information. For the first time in the Trade Experts history, we are blessed today with having translators. So we will have in not only English, but also French and Spanish. So all of the official languages for the WTO. This session is hosted with the kind support of Microsoft, MasterCard, and the Konrad Adenauer Foundation. Because we will be keeping things very short and sweet today to make the most out of this session, I will keep the introductions to an absolute minimum, but will let you know that I am so excited about this webinar. We are, as usual, we have such amazing speakers. So we have from South Africa today, Louise Wiggett coming in from Global Trade Solution. We have Quan Zhao from the ITC. We have Marta Soprana from LSE Ideas Lab, and we have Eunice Huang from Google. And I am sharing this moderation with Cedric Amon from the Konrad Adenauer Foundation. They all have incredible CVs, and so you can check them out on LinkedIn, but I will keep it at that just to get us started. We're going to open with a round of opening remarks, sort of setting the tables. And I have asked all the speakers to give an overview of what they feel from coming from their different backgrounds. So we have been very careful here in getting as many perspectives as possible to the table to get a 360. So I think that I'm going to start with you, Louise, because you work with SMEs in this new digitized economy. So I'm going to hand the floor over to you first.
Thank you very much, Hannah, and greetings to everybody across the globe from beautiful Cape Town in South Africa. I do apologize. I have to do a pitch for our beautiful country and welcome all of you to come and visit us at some stage, and also wish you all the best with the deliberations. In our wonderful new world of technology, that includes AI, I think we all realize that data is becoming a core economic asset, which is actually quite scary because a couple of years ago, nobody really realized that we have got gold sitting under our fingertips. And every time we touch a keyboard, we are actually creating more gold. So I think the reality is that AI and AI systems are reshaping services, manufacturing, logistics, and the regulatory oversight. Trade policies increasingly being shaped by rules on data flows, digital regulation, cybersecurity, competition, and platform governance. And all of these words didn't exist in our vocabulary probably as far back as, I would say, 5 or 10 years ago. What is also concerning is the speed with which things are changing. And I look at the my fellow panelists and the age that I suspect they are, and I realize that they, the younger generation that are used to this fast pace of speed, and I think it is important that we do understand that this wild gallop that we're on at the moment is not going to slow down. In fact, I think it is just going to get wilder and it's going to get quicker. So it is very important that we, both from a trade perspective and possibly a trade negotiation perspective, realize that the luxury of being able to talk about things for a very long time is maybe not on our side anymore. We're going to have to move along quite quickly. Things like 2 years of negotiation doesn't exist in this wild world that we're living now. And we need to really grab the horse by the reins and get in charge of this wild gallop that we're on. I think important is aspects like AI as a trade shaper and not just as a sector is very, very important to consider. Data governance as the new trade frontier, I mean, it is critically important. Important questions about cross-border data flows versus data localization. It's critical aspects that we've got to address and move on. AI regulations and regulatory space, you know, data standard setting is very important. And I think that is one of the areas where, in particular, the WTO and trade experts have been doing amazing work. We also need to have a look that AI standards and the way we approach the negotiations is not becoming de facto trade barriers. Because we can now resurrect completely new barriers that we didn't anticipate and look at before. Digital trade agreements as strategic tools. I think there's a lot been said in the previous sessions about the WTO joint statement on e-commerce. Getting that to finality. I've coined the phrase, just do it, and compliments to Nike. If we can just get it done, it will mean a lot to us. And I think these aspects are critically and important that we consider them going into the future. And then very, very importantly, there's obviously the have and the have not space. So is infrastructure constraints, digital taxations, and standard influence really going to play such a big role? And I think it is important to see that the gap between the more developed countries and the least developed countries is actually in this space existing and also growing, which is a concern. So I think it is important that we recognize we are living in a different world that is moving at speed and also reshaping quite a lot of our environments. One aspect that I have to touch on, Hannah, is obviously also how AI is influencing the world of customs, because I think that's also very important. The entire world of customs is changing. I mean, we come from a background where we had the luxury of data flowing slowly on paper. Now we're in an environment where data is flowing at such rapid speed. I mean, I very often engage with companies that are in this space, and when they talk about lead times of 5 to 7 days to perform a certain function, I kind of go, what planet are you living on? Because it can't be like that. And I think even in the customs space and the changes that's being impacted in the customs space, it's important for the trade negotiators to take cognizance of it. Trade statistics that's more than a month old is actually old. The information is available. We need to look at this information, and we actually need to be able to harness and use this information much quicker and use what is at our fingertips. Also, the pool of information that we've got access to is much bigger than before. And we actually, in a way, need to reposition the negotiations and the way that we do it to be able to harness all of this. So I hope that was short and sweet, and I hope I've answered your question. So thank you very much, Hannah, and over to the next speaker. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Louise. Excellent input there. I realized I forgot one thing as we were going in, and that is to please ask the audience to use our Q&A box so that we can have this conversation as we go. In the previous sessions, we've had a lot of action there, and that's been really insightful. So, Louise, you work with SMEs in South Africa that are going on the digital space or moving into the modern world. I'm going to go to you, Kwan, because you have been looking at this on a larger scale on the importance of AI for SMEs across the world.
Well, thank you very much, Hannah, and good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for the invitation. So indeed, my name is Kwan. I'm from the International Trade Center. It's a joint agency of the UN and the WTO. We're focusing on the SME competitiveness in trade. So ITC, basically, we run technical assistance programs for developing countries to help their SMEs to engage more in global trade. So I think obviously we're all living in a very dynamic age, especially with AI. I think this technological advancement has been accelerated a lot. So AI, I think, compared to traditional shifts from, for example, the internet, is that I think first the speed of adoption of AI technologies is much faster. For many of the AI tools that we're currently using today, getting their first billion users took less than a year, and previously it probably took several years or decades. And second, that AI is a general purpose technology, so it has broad applications across different sectors, be it trade or services, manufacturing, agriculture, health, education. So whatever sector that though will be reshaped by AI technologies. So zooming in on SMEs and AI, I think we are looking at how SMEs can leverage AI technologies, especially in trade. And through our interactions and our work with SMEs around the world, and especially in developing countries, I think what we're seeing is that a lot of companies, SMEs, are actually already applying AI technologies in their day-to-day work. So, for instance, in marketing, it's very common for SMEs, especially in developing countries, to use AI technologies to improve or generate product descriptions, generate pictures for their products, or even videos. They could do targeted marketing campaigns, which are different from the traditional marketing campaigns because AI can adapt that to particular markets with a cultural nuance. And it also helps a lot of companies to develop their own websites, their own social media accounts. And in terms of marketing and market research and strategies, AI obviously can help SMEs to identify market demands and trends, like using AI to analyze social media posts, search data, local market reports to identify new demands and trends in the markets. And also AI can help companies to gain competitive intelligence, like dynamic real-time monitoring of the prices of certain products across different platforms so that you know what is the pricing strategy of the competitors and then adapt a strategy accordingly. So that's why at ITC, we have also been using and applying AI to our products and services, trying to help SMEs. For example, we have a global trade help desk, which is an integrated platform that integrates all trade-related information from tariffs to trade flows to TBT SPS requirements and etc. So we've been working on applying AI technologies to make it easier to find answers and information on those platforms. Another product, for example, the joint WTO ITC EPIN alert system, which focuses on TBT and SPS measures, also supports stakeholders in tracking trade-related AI developments. And obviously, AI is used a lot in communications, interpretation, for meetings, note-taking, summarizing, and etc. It's used in customer services. AI chatbots can stay online 24/7, providing feedback to customers. And also, we see that companies actually use AI also for legal support, reviewing contracts, drafting contracts, identification of any potential regulatory or taxation issues in their operations. And I think Luis also mentioned the customs side. Actually, some companies also use AIs to help scan their products and generate forms for customs declarations, identification of HS codes. So those really help SMEs to reduce risks of HS misclassifications. And another important area, which I think is probably an area where most benefits would see most benefit, is in the digital and services trade, because AI tools such as vibe coding has made programming much easier to anyone, even without a sort of knowledge of computer programming. Can develop their own apps and videos and music. So it will significantly facilitate development of trading services. And then on the policy implication side, obviously, with all these applications, which we're mentioning only for the SME traders, but there's certainly broader application for in other sectors and areas. So AI certainly involves much broader scope of policies, from traditional issues like cross-border data flows, localization, barriers to services trade, intellectual property right, competition frameworks. These are the issues that has been in the discussions among policymakers for years. But in addition to that, I think the new topics, policy topics, will be also very important, and they're emerging actually in across different discussions, like how should we govern algorithms. I think previously policy discussions has been more focused on data governance and platform governance, but algorithm itself is a new area. And implications on labor markets, that's also another very important topic, because I think there's a lot of fear that AI is going to displace especially the lower end of the job market. And environmental sustainability, use of energy, use of water, use of resources, and so all of these will become more prominent in the upcoming discussions on AI-related policies. I think if we're looking at countries domestically, some governments, they're actively promoting AI adoption, but others are taking a bit more cautious stance. They're looking at how to manage risks that are associated with AI. And then we have the third set of countries, which usually are lower income countries that do not yet have any policy frameworks for AI at all. So to develop such regulatory frameworks, I think as we have always been advising governments, is that there needs to be a balanced approach. If the rules and regulations are too stringent, they're going to limit the development of the sector, and especially for the SMEs, because they don't have the sufficient capacities to meet the regulatory requirements. But if the rules are absent, especially in the case of privacy, consumer protection, and etc., that is also not going to work for the long-term healthy growth of the sector. So there needs to be a balanced approach. And that is why I think in this context, the WTO agreement on electronic commerce is a really important step, because it provides a framework to guide countries to develop their own national policy frameworks that enable digital trade and also including AI. I think this is my personal opinion that this agreement and also including other new agreements at the WTO, for example, the investment facilitation agreement, is a sort of new generation of trade agreements. I've served previously as a trade negotiator, but what I see is that this new generation of trade agreements, they focus more on providing a global framework for common standards and practices. Traditionally, trade negotiations used to focus on give and take. I reduce tariff by this much, and you open the services market, and etc. But for the e-commerce agreement and investment facilitation agreement, for example, they aim at providing a global framework that sets the norms and standards. So that's why I think it's important for countries, especially developing countries, to engage in such endeavors and to use that as an opportunity to advance their own national frameworks, which will ensure healthy growth of the sector in the long run. Thank you.
My screen is frozen here. Thank you so much, Kwan. That's really insightful and gives a really good overview. Louise, you wanted to jump back in here already?
I know, I think Kwan touched on something that I also mentioned around digital trade agreements as strategic tools. So I think it is really important that this is the area that can be explored on several fronts, because it is something that we've actually never looked at as it being a strategic tool. And Kwan, since you were a trade negotiator, it will be good to see your opinion. Is it something that least developed countries and other countries can start using to strengthen their position, where they're not that data rich and one of the predominant powers? Sorry, Hannah, it's just an absolute opportunity to jump in. So I don't want to leave it to the end. So thank you.
Love it. Thank you so much. Well, we have the perfect person to speak about all of this is Eunice. So Eunice, not only, so we've been talking a lot on in this series of the importance of digitally delivered services as input for other production factors. So not only as a service that you take, and of course with Google having their own AI agent that we're all using is a great example. And also before that, Eunice wore other hats, both as a representative for the Singapore government and also at the WTO. So she's sort of like a little kinder egg of 3-in-1 here, trying to answer things from all different views. So why don't you jump in next, Eunice?
Thank you so much, Hannah, and good evening from Singapore. Just listening to Louise and Kwan, I'm just and this audience, I'm just brought back to my WTO days, and sort of sitting in room W and for hours on hand and sort of going through line by line these statements, and that was a period in my life, right, where I was like, okay, things are moving, but they are slow, right? And as they are in multilateral sort of institutions, you need to find consensus. I feel like where I am today, and my job at Google really is about looking at AI policy and AI regulation, specifically focused in Asia, but I also look at some of the other markets outside of Asia. And it's the other end of the spectrum. The speed of adoption and change. In 2023, it was all about LLMs and generative AI, right? And then in 2020, 24, 25, we started hearing about AI agents. We moved from chatbots to agents, right? And this year it's really, sort of there's a lot more attention on agentic AI systems. But also we're starting to see AI being embedded in what I call, like future generation technologies in physical AI, right? Robotics, for example. These are the issues that are moving at like super quick pace. And I think, sort of wearing both hats, the WTO really does need to um, have a way of dealing with these issues and also finding its voice and relevance in this very rapidly changing world. So I think, Quen just now talked about how fundamentally I think the baseline is that AI really is a general purpose technology, right? Which means that it is a technology that enables other technologies. And what this really means is that fundamentally we'll see it already is happening, AI changing business and trade in very, very fundamental ways. Right? It's going to be integrated into every good and service across every sector. And countries' ability to export will increasingly also be determined by new AI and digital regulation. And that, my day to day, right, is exploding at the national level, at the subnational level. The states in the US are coming up with different kinds of AI regulations. And I think critical to this is that every country recognizes that AI will be fundamental and will drive its future competitiveness, right? So the question here is, how do we make the most of it for trade? And what can the WTO, what role can the WTO play in the midst of all of that? I'll give you a couple of examples in terms of um, some opportunities that we see right from the Google end, and it's very tangible from where we're sitting. Um, the first major impact that we've seen on AI is really about improved multilinguality and improved multimodality in AI models. And this really, opens up new cross-border trade opportunities, right? Because it reduces the linguistic friction and reduces a lot of like the operational challenges that SMEs have when they're trying to scale, when they're trying to export. One example is because of AI, Google Translate in 2024, we have this technique called a zero shot machine translation, which means that the algorithm is able to learn and translate into other languages without ever seeing an example. And that's just incredible. That just blows my mind, right? But it's able to do it with such a good at such a good amount of accuracy and standard that we basically in 2024 we rolled out 110 new languages to Google Translate. And it includes dialects, right? It includes languages that are spoken by, I don't know, 100 people. Right. And now Google Translate has like about 249 languages. And if you think about that tool, translation tool, and the utility of that in terms of cross-border trade and reducing that friction, I think is going to be tremendous. The second thing, when we talk about agents, I think that's going to be the other area where we're going to see a lot of utility for trade, for cross-border trade. Agentic AI is going to reduce transaction costs and delay, right? Because it helps to automate that commercial negotiation between players. So, many things, the drudgery of filling in forms and all of that, is going to be able to be automated to some degree. The technology is not 100% perfect or accurate, but it's getting better, right? So can you can imagine the use cases for that and how AI agents are going to fundamentally shift the way customs processes are going to be engineered. How do you synthesize information like trade documentation, bills of lading, certificates of origin, things like that? I think that's going to be extremely critical. So I think the question then is how do we capture these opportunities? And there are three risks that from our point of view we see that could undermine some of this very, very good work and opportunities for trade. The first one is basically regulatory fragmentation. And this is not a new issue in terms of trade, right? It's happened in agriculture trade, it's happened in services trade, in different types of trade. But where we're seeing that explosion of regulations, and each going different ways, is going to be, I think, something that would really add a lot of friction, and where we really need international standards in this space. And this is where I think trade negotiators can really play a role. The second one is restrictions on data. And this is something I think Quen also mentioned just now. One feedback that we always hear is, these major models that are used in the world are trained by Western companies. They don't understand our culture, they don't understand our language, and I don't feel like I'm getting a good enough output or answer in the chatbot in my native language. All valid, and I think that is something that we are constantly seeking to improve. But I think restrictions in terms of cross-border data flows is going to make this worse, right? Because it really will impact model quality, not just for the big tech players, right? But for everybody. A capable model needs to be trained on various sources of data, trillions of tokens of data. And that's not going to be possible if there are restrictions. For example, if I cannot access data from a certain country, from a certain language, that means that it's going to be, the models that are going to be used are going to be less representative and less inclusive. And then the third one is really the intersection of AI, trade, and copyright restrictions. And this is where I think it's going to be, if it's not handled well, I think it's going to be harder for smaller players, for smaller companies to be able to really be competitive. I'm not saying this as the big companies are having and struggling with this, but I think it's going to be something that will hit the smaller players and startups even more. So I think a certain balance, a risk-based approach to AI is important. And there are things that the WTO can do very practically to help move and progress this space. So I'll end here. Happy to take questions later.
Phenomenal overview, Eunice. I'm so happy that we have you here because so few people can do the 360 from all of this. But speaking of having a huge overview, Marta, you are an academic looking at all of this. What's your view on trade and AI and the WTO?
Thank you so much. It is really a pleasure to be here today and have the opportunity to present a little bit some of the lessons that I've learned in this now 8 years of research on trade and AI. I am going to, in a way, repeat some of the points that the previous panelists have made, because it is important to underline certain aspects of the relationship between AI and trade, and to repeat this over and over again because they're some of the pillars of these relationships. I think that the first point that I would like to make and to repeat from what others have made is that AI is a game changer for everyone. And this is because AI is a general purpose technology. Compared to other digital technologies, AI, it is already and will impact our life across all aspects of our life, not only trade, but beyond trade, in ways that more likely we're not even be able to imagine today. And it unleashes opportunities for growth that every country can capitalize on. But the other aspect is that artificial intelligence poses risks that cannot be contained within national borders. This means that this is a technology that we need sort of the challenges and opportunities that arise from this general purpose technology must be addressed through collective action. Unilateral action can only go that far, cannot really address some of the biggest risks that arise from the use of a technology that, since its conceptualization in the 1950s, has now been undergone such massive transformation that now we're actually talking about AI systems that are way more autonomous, or that have a higher degree of autonomy than we had ever seen before. Now, why is AI a game changer? Because AI, from a trade perspective, AI, it's going to impact trade in 3 key areas. One is in what we trade and how we trade, which my colleagues have explained very well. We're talking about the fact that artificial intelligence, in order to actually work, requires data. It requires microprocessors. It requires talent, people that actually know what they're doing, and not simply IT experts, but AI experts. And it requires the functioning of certain algorithms. This means that trade in these AI components will be increasingly more important in a world where AI will dominate the digital economy. They also have rightly said it is also going to change what we're trading. We're trading goods and services now that have more AI embedded in them. It means that also we may have services that were not feasible or possible decades ago, and now can actually be implemented. They're actually feasible. We may have new, completely different services that we didn't envisage before. And also, and I think this is especially important with agentic AI, they may change our understanding of what a service supplier is. If these are autonomous machines with a high degree of autonomy, they could be very different from natural persons. And so we need to rethink probably what kind of suppliers operate in the world. Now, the second impact is on actors, meaning AI could actually reshape comparative advantage with a potential impact on the direction of trade flows, and therefore lead maybe to the emergence of new players. It also means that today, countries that have high AI capabilities are likely to hold greater power to influence the type of norms and rules that regulate artificial intelligence and trade relations. So in the future, even short term, AI capabilities will be a crucial factor in digital economy. And the third aspect, which I think should be acknowledged, is that we're no longer having research and development of artificial intelligence contained or driven primarily by academia. This would have happened until the early 2000s. But it's since the 2010s that AI development happens primarily in private laboratories that have therefore a lot of knowledge and influence about AI development and AI regulation. This means that as policymakers and as trade negotiators, it is important to understand that there cannot be discussion on AI regulation and its impact on trade without having frank conversations with the private sector. But it also means understanding that the development of AI is driven primarily by companies that by default and by name are for-profit entities, and therefore will develop AI for profit purposes primarily. And this changes completely the dynamic. And the third point that I want to make that connects what has been said before regards the impact of AI on rules, meaning not only what is negotiated, what the rules are, but also how we negotiate rules. Because artificial intelligence is to a certain extent already testing the limits of existing trade regulations. And this is why we have seen the emergence of regulations addressing cross-border data flows, restrictions to source codes, and other aspects of artificial intelligence regulation in bilateral trade agreements, in regional trade agreements, in what are now more commonly known as digital economy agreements, where in particular countries such as Singapore, for example, in AI have been quite a driving force in a way in creating new rules that are very much relevant and specific to artificial intelligence. But also we see that we are moving towards probably a new way of approaching digital trade regulation that favors more interoperability, soft law approaches with exceptions, or maybe sunset clauses. So a little bit more flexibility to respond to one of the challenges that my colleagues have rightly mentioned, which is the difference in pace of technological development as opposed to regulatory development. On the other hand is, how can rules be changed? AI could actually make it easier, maybe, or can help in advancing negotiations as a tool for negotiations. So sort of what I will, of all of this, what I would like you sort of to remember is, irrespective of your current AI capabilities, irrespective of how you stand currently on AI, it is absolutely fundamental that as trade negotiators, you do discuss artificial intelligence and that you consider the WTO as a potential forum for addressing some of the specific challenges that emerge from artificial intelligence.
Phenomenal. Thank you so much, Marta. So speaking of working across generations, that the younger generation are better at AI. That is also very true in the team of Cedric and me. So I'm going to hand over to Cedric to take us through here, but I will reserve the right to come back to all of you for a closing sentence. So for your so-called elevator pitch, we like to think about this as if you were to run into an elevator with the trade ministers heading into MC14, what is the one sentence, the one elevator pitch, the one thing that you could say in 10 seconds that will close us off? So I'll be back for that. But for now, I will hand it over to you, Cedric.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much to our panelists. It's been phenomenal. I think having those different points kind of as a, I would like to say, as a shopping list ahead of the ministerial that is coming up, what do you need to consider, seeing AI as, well, both a service that is being traded, but also, as Marta just pointed out, all the underlying issues that are also going to pose trade challenges in the future, considering the talent, considering the hard infrastructure, which is also sometimes overlooked. It would be, I'm still wrapping my head around how of this, and I do not envy our negotiators in the room, in the audience. But maybe I would ask just one slight general question and hear your different perspectives on that, in kind of as we're trying to, I want to call it, equip some of our negotiators ahead of the conference. that you all mentioned in some way the different speeds and the different levels of readiness of AI that countries have. And if you can pinpoint some of the elements that are most important that you would say, this is a key element to consider so that you're creating an enabling environment, but also not limiting yourself or your countries in making the best use of AI. And maybe also because I see that we also have a question from the audience. In your opinion, is AI governance necessary? Maybe that can be tied into that. If it does, do we need a broader framework? Do we need does it need to be considered in just one venue? So I'd like to hear your thoughts on that first. Thank you so much. And I will maybe say in reverse order. We just had Marta close. So maybe Marta, you want to take this one from here?
Yes, thank you. Well, in a way, to answer the question about AI governance and what will be important, in my opinion, yes, we need AI governance. We need AI governance because this technology there are certain risks associated with this technology that require action. It is such a powerful type of technology, and there is so much interest in ensuring that this technology can develop and unleash the opportunities that are attached to it, that we actually need to find ways to govern and to ensure that we can balance innovation with the minimization of risks. I think that what Eunice also mentioned was having a balanced risk-based approach as a solution to the issue, and I do agree with her point. What I think is fundamental in a way to remember is, in the context of the WTO, we're not talking about absence of rules. The fact that the technology is developing so fast and doesn't mean that we don't already have rules that can be relevant for AI. I think the biggest challenge, and what I would encourage the negotiators to understand and to figure out, is exactly where the gaps are and where actually real action is needed. I think that is where I see the need for AI governance, is potentially filling the gaps that are not at the moment, that have been left sort of there by, for example, challenges that we have seen with time in reaching multilateral agreement over sort of consensus over multilateral rules. So I think that, for example, MC14 could be a good opportunity also to try to really understand where really we need rules. I agree with the point made by Kwan about how important sort of the agreement on electronic commerce is as a good first step. But I would say that it should be considered as the beginning of a discussion that should absolutely take place also at the WTO. I'm not saying that the WTO is the only forum where AI should be discussed, but the WTO does have a role to play in the AI race.
Thank you very much. Yes, I think Eunice, if you
yeah.
Thank you.
So I agree very much with most of what Marta said. From my perspective, I think at the end of the day, to benefit from AI, the key is really about broad adoption, and broad adoption cannot happen without trust, right? So people need to be able to trust the technology to want to use it. That's simple. So how do you build this trust? And I think AI governance is absolutely essential. But I would caveat that to say that when you think about AI governance, it's not just about regulation, right? I think governance can come through many other ways, whether other ways of promoting trust and sort of making sure that the technology is appropriately governed. I give you an example. So I talked to a lot of governments about AI governance and policy. Some governments, like Singapore, have decided that they will not put in any horizontal law on AI. Because precisely what Martha mentioned, they believe that actually a lot of the risks that AI poses are already covered by existing laws, right? So they said, look, I have a privacy law. And if your AI chatbot like spits out personal information that is not supposed to be out there, then I will use my privacy law to enforce, right? I don't need a new horizontal law just so that I can show that I'm doing AI regulation. Instead, what they're doing is working through standards, working through very practical testing tools that they're offering to small businesses. And sort of they're building up an AI assurance ecosystem, right? So that's one example of Singapore. Now, just today, I was reading through this bill, this AI proposed draft regulation. Now, this country has decided that it wants to go down the path of regulation, which is fine, right? But what's in that draft actually would make things worse. So my caveat here is also that I think balanced risk-based AI regulation can be very helpful, but if AI regulation is written in a way that just doesn't make sense, or it's too broad and too sweeping, it can actually be backfire and sort of hold a country back in terms of how AI is able to be deployed in the country. So I think that is my long and short answer to that. On WTO, if I could just add 3 points, I think specific to the WTO and given my experience there, I think there are 3 practical things that WTO can do and should consider. The first is transparency, right? You already have these committees that are, TPRMs and all of that. Why not include and catalog AI and digital regulation? I don't know if that's already happening. I left in 2017, but there's a whole slew of AI regulation that should be captured because and then the trade effects of that should also be analyzed. That's the first thing. The second thing is the standards piece, and I think we've talked about this, right? International standards, TBT, SPS agreements, they set a critical baseline, right? That governments should not deviate from international standards. If they exist, and then if they don't, then they have to explain why there's a need for that deviation. The same can apply for AI with ISO standards, for example. And then the third is really, I think, capacity building. So that's where it comes to how can we show governments, how can we show trade authorities that AI can be a really helpful tool, right? For customs, for supply chain forecasting, things like that. So I think the WTO really has a role to play in this area as well. So just to repeat, I think transparency, standards, and then capacity building. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And also highlighting the point of governance not only being regulation, right? I think that's an important one to keep in mind. I think we had Kwan.
Oh, thank you. I think on what WTO can do, I totally echo with Eunice and also what Martha. There's a lot of things that is already being discussed, and I think achieving concrete results on those topics that have been discussed for years will be really important. But putting the WTO negotiations aside, I think I'd like to speak a bit more about what Louise mentioned earlier. I think it's really important to ensure that developing countries are not left out in this race. And personally, I think there's certainly a great risk that developing countries can be left out, and the digital divide can be even larger with AI technologies, essentially because of 2 reasons. One is that it's a general purpose technology, so no one wants to use a less intelligent AI model, right? So basically, the sort of winner takes all approach is going to be even more even a worse problem. Like for e-commerce, we can use different e-commerce websites, but for AI, I think everyone wants to use the best technology. So that's one thing. The other thing is that I think we need to distinguish between AI development and AI adoption. That these are two concepts that I find very enlightening in the WTO report on AI. So for AI development, basically developing AI models and developing AI tools, these are very costly compared to traditional digital technologies. Training AI models could take billions of dollars, and it's not any company in developing countries could easily do. So that's why we only see a concentration of AI models being developed in developed countries. But on the other hand, there's a vast untapped potential of AI adoption. So basically building on the AI technologies, developing tools and applications that can enhance efficiencies in different sectors. And that's something that really developing countries shouldn't miss. And it'll be really a missed opportunity if regulations prevent that from happening. So, yeah, that's just my thinking about that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And you already mentioned Louise and Louise's point, and maybe I want to add to that.
No, thank you. I fully agree with Martha, Eunice, and Kwan around how to approach it. So I really want to say, do we really need governance and restrictions or more guardrails to be developed? Because those are more kind of make the playpen that we can play in quite clear. And Eunice, you were quite right. You know, the protection of private information is already there. Why reinvent that wheel? So that for me is very important. But I think the one thing that we do need to realize here, the opportunity for public-private sector collaboration and participation here is absolutely immense. Companies like Google and some of the other companies has invested billions into this and really does trade officials and trade negotiators have that kind of experience, understanding and everything? I think the answer is yes, some of them might, but it might also be limited. And it creates the opportunity for us really to embrace the experience, the expertise, and learn from it and use that to assist in setting up the guardrails instead of running off. Eunice, I love you saying, oh, this country did it and it's going to get worse. And that is my fear factor, that countries are going to just step into the space and say, we've got to have a law, and the law is going to be crafted very badly and actually have the worst impact that we possibly could have and dampen and create trade barriers here. And I think that is something that we need to, it's a very big balancing act. And I think there the WTO can play a leading and a really important role. So that's just my little feedback on it. Thank you very much.
Phenomenal. I'm jumping back in here, Cedric. I feel like we're talking about how fast AI is developing, and I feel like I'm just stuck in how fast this hour has just flown by. So when we're talking about the report, the World Trade Report is what we're talking about, the WTO World Trade Report for 2025. For all of you who are listening to this, that is a great place to start to understand the importance of AI in trade and the potential that is out there. Let's do the rounds with your elevator pitch here. This time around, we're gonna throw Kwan to go first. You're in the elevator. Let's go with a trade negotiator or the minister. What is it that you want them to know?
Being a fellow trade negotiator years ago, I would really encourage my fellow trade negotiator to drop the traditional mindset of give and take in the trade negotiations, and let's work together to address some challenges that need a global concerted effort.
That's a really great one, Martha.
If I were to meet a negotiator in the elevator, I will just say the stakes are too high, the opportunities are too great. participate, discuss, and cooperate.
Phenomenal, Luis.
Oh, press the right button. For me, it would be really consider restrictions on cross-border data flows. I think it's one of the underlying pillars of making this magic works. And realize that by restricting that, it's already going down the wrong path. Thank you.
Eunice.
Having come out of the bubble, I would just say that Geneva is a bubble. And especially with the way things are today, I think trade negotiators really need to very proactively get out and understand the changes and the developments and then bring it back and work on very practical things. I think the days of trying to have a mega trade agreement like Doha is, it's just not practical. But there are practical things to be done, and we should start now.
Excellent. All right. Well, we've gone from big picture to small picture to bite-sized in the elevator, and this has been a phenomenal panel. I will soon let everybody go, and I will soon also open the window for Cedric to jump on in here. I'm just going to do a little blurb for what we're doing coming up next. So in 2 weeks, on February 26th in the afternoon, if you are seeing this and you are in Geneva, boy, do we have a treat for you. This is a dream come true. So together with the Diplo Foundation and the St. Gallen Endowment, they have developed an AI agent, Clerk, to do trade negotiations. And they are coming to Geneva. So together with Cedric and me, we will be doing this in person at the Konrad Adenauer Foundation. Invitations will go out very, very soon. Space is limited. If you get the email, reply right away that you want to join. And if we get an overwhelming amount, maybe we can switch the room. Maybe. But please let us know as soon as possible. This is a unique opportunity that we are so grateful for our collaborators to help us with. Also, so this is our third webinar with the grand finale next in person. We also have a surprise. So we also have an asynchronous addition to all of this. So with all the amazing tools, all the amazing reports that are coming out of Geneva and other places, we have reached out to all our friends and had them do little recordings. So 5-minute recordings of important things that are coming out. Reports and tools. And so there will be a compilation of those, and they will be coming out soon, as soon as we can. And they will be posted on the website. So keep an eye out for that. And also, if you happen to have a tool and you're like, or you've seen somebody, let us know. Maybe we can sneak it in. Because I hear a lot of talk about capacity building, and that just happens to be what we love to do at the Trade Express. So that summarizes it for me. Was there anything else, Cedric?
No, maybe just again, also from my side, thanking our panelists, thanking our participants. And as Hannah had said in the beginning, we are also really specifically trying to get your colleagues in capitals as well, because we know that this, as we said, the Geneva is a bubble, as you just said, but sometimes it can also help, to have these discussions flow across borders. And please do keep an eye out for the policy recaps. They also have a QR code on which you will then be able to access these videos online if you don't know where to find them. So please, and as Hannah just said, reach out if you have more tools, more things that we should be featuring, and also to our panelists if they are amazing experts. And I know that this hour was way too short, but maybe this can be just a starter for the conversation.
Yes, exactly. So again, thank you so much to our speakers, obviously, to the Trade Experts team who have been doing this, to the translators, to the Konrad Adenauer Foundation, to MasterCard and Microsoft. Without their help, none of this would have happened. And it's been such an enormous pleasure to do this. And the policy recaps are only just that one pager. So when we talked about the elevator pitch, we've taken it to heart. And so we work hard at summarizing all this awesomeness into one page so that you can bring that to your negotiators and the experts across the world. So without further ado, good evening, good morning, good night, wherever you're coming in from. But at any rate, huge thank you to all of you here and to our audience, as usual, who are asking phenomenal questions. So please stay in the loop. Thank you so very much, Marta. Thank you, Kwan, Louise, Eunice, and Cedric, and to the team. Have a good morning, noon, night, wherever you are. Hope to see you again soon.